You Really Got Me by the Kinks. Released in 1964, this song is often called one of the very first hard rock songs ever made, even though the term hard rock didn't exist yet. What makes it so iconic is its distorted guitar sound, which was completely new at the time, so it was the first of its kind. Guitarist Dave Davies actually created that sound by slashing the speaker cone of his amp with a razor blade and poking it with a pin to make it buzz and growl. The result was a very aggressive tone that stood out from the clean, polished sound of most 1960s pop and rock. That opening riff hits like a punch, and it became one of the most recognizable intros in rock history. Lyrically, the song is just as daring and bold. It's about intense, almost desperate attraction, like the line, "You really got me going, you got me so I don't know what I'm doing." That kind of unfiltered emotion, shouted instead of sung in the pretty way most songs were composed at the time, was something new. Ray Davies' voice sounded on edge, like he meant every word. The song's energy was wild, almost reckless, and as you'd expect, young listeners absolutely loved it. They were looking for something louder and more rebellious than what their parents were listening to, and You Really Got Me was perfect for them. Even the structure of the song, with its short, punchy verses and explosive guitar solo, set the blueprint for hard rock and later punk. Without it, you might not have Van Halen, who famously covered the song in 1978 with even more fire. Musicians like Pete Townshend of The Who and even punk rock bands have pointed to this track as a major influence. For a song that's under 3 minutes long, it really started a trend of rougher, louder, and unapologetically raw music. My Generation by The Who. My Generation is one of the most rebellious rock songs of the 1960s, and it went beyond all boundaries of rock music. The 1965 track is basically built around pure frustration, from the feeling of being young and unheard of to having something to say but no one listening. Roger Daltrey stutters his way through the lyrics such as, "Why don't you all fade away?" Not because he had a speech issue, but to mimic the anger and anxiety of youth. This quickly got people talking because at the time, that stutter was so controversial that some people thought it was mocking the disabled, while others thought it was censorship. But to die-hard fans of The Who, it felt like the song understood them. Pete Townshend's guitar riffs, John Entwistle's groundbreaking bass solo, and Keith Moon's manic drumming all come together to make this song sound like it's constantly on the verge of falling apart, and that's exactly what made it great. More than just a hit, My Generation became an anthem for an entire youth movement. It was pretty much a giant middle finger to the older generation with lines like, "Hope I die before I get old," that terrified parents but got teenagers fired up. Musically, the song introduced a heavier, more distorted sound that laid the foundation for punk and hard rock. Even now, My Generation is still iconic because it captured a feeling almost everyone has had at some point, not being understood and wanting to tear everything down. It just screams exactly what it means. And that brutal honesty, combined with its loud sound, is why it's considered one of the first true hard rock songs. Happenings 10 years time ago by the Yardbirds. In 1966, the Yardbirds released this unforgettable song that doesn't follow a normal formula. It's chaotic, strange, and packed with psychedelics. But what got people so intrigued by it was that it was way ahead of its time. Two guitar legends, Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, were playing side by side on this track. That alone is historic. The two traded jagged riffs and strange sounds, using distortion and feedback in ways that most bands hadn't even thought about yet. The result was a song that felt like an audio hallucination, and you were falling through someone's seemingly empty mind. There's barely a steady rhythm, and the structure keeps changing, making it feel disturbing but also exciting. It's one of the earliest songs to capture that kind of mental chaos with both lyrics and sound. Lyrically, it's a song about déjà vu, memory, and paranoia. The narrator talks about dreams that don't feel like dreams and moments from the past that won't go away. It's creepy and a little disorienting, but that's actually on purpose. Unlike other rock songs of the era that were still into blues or love themes, this one went completely off the rails and into existential dread. The Yardbirds were one of the first bands to push rock music toward this darker, weirder, and heavier music style. They took traditional blues-based rock and twisted it into something more like proto-metal. Without songs like this, there would be no Led Zeppelin, no Black Sabbath, and no progressive rock. People didn't know what to make of Happenings 10 years time ago when it came out. It didn't top the charts and it confused a lot of listeners, but decades later, it's recognized as one of the iconic songs that birthed hard rock, Helter Skelter by the Beatles.
To the bottom, I go back to the top of the slide. Where I stop and I turn and I go for a ride.
This hit song by the Beatles was the moment the world realized the Beatles could get loud and chaotic with their music. Most people thought of them as clean-cut pop geniuses, but this 1968 track completely changed that image. Paul McCartney wrote it as a direct response to people saying the Beatles couldn't rock as hard as bands like The Who, so he cranked the amps, strained his voice, and made a song that sounded like a roller coaster spiraling out of control. From the opening guitar squeal to the crashing drums and McCartney screaming like he's losing his mind, Helter Skelter was the heaviest thing the Beatles had ever done. It shocked fans and critics, proving that they could be just as loud, raw, and unhinged as anyone. The song gets its name from a British amusement park slide, but it feels nothing like innocent, random fun. It feels more like chaos. Ringo Starr even screams, "I've got blisters on my fingers," at the end, which was actually the truth, and it was unplanned. They had played the song so hard that it physically hurt. That out-of-control energy helped build hard rock and heavy metal as they're known today. What makes this song even more iconic is how it was later twisted by Charles Manson, who believed it was a sign of an upcoming race war. While that has nothing to do with the Beatles' actual intentions, it added more legacy to an already wild song. Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. Released in 1968, Sunshine of Your Love was a game-changer for rock because it took the deep groove of blues music and made it louder, dirtier, and more hypnotic. The riff, written by Jack Bruce and inspired by Jimi Hendrix, is one of the most instantly recognizable riffs in rock history. Eric Clapton's guitar tone on this track is deep and strong. It's the kind of sound that you find hard to turn away from once you put it on. Ginger Baker's tribal drumming doesn't just keep rhythm, it drives the whole song forward with this steady, primal force. The world quickly realized that this wasn't just a blues song, it was heavier and more forceful than anything most people had heard at the time. It felt darker and even a little dangerous. Clapton used his famous woman tone, which is a kind of thick, violin-like distortion, to give the guitar a new kind of emotional weight. Instead of a quick, catchy tune, Sunshine of Your Love easily dragged you through this slow, rolling wave of sound that was both soulful and aggressive. It blurred the lines between blues, rock, and what would soon become heavy metal. It was also one of the first rock songs where the guitar was the main character. It was no surprise when Sunshine of Your Love topped the charts and left a lasting mark on rock music. It influenced everyone from Led Zeppelin to Black Sabbath, and it's still a reference point for bands who want to mix groove with some tough sounds. Summertime Blues by Blue Cheer.
Are you ready? House America, come on, Blue Cheer with your hit.
Often called one of the first true heavy metal recordings, this hit 1968 track earned that title with its raw, almost deafening force. Originally a rockabilly song by Eddie Cochran, Blue Cheer's version sounds like a Demolition Crew was set loose in a recording studio. The guitars are cranked, the bass snarls, and the vocals sound like someone shouting from the middle of a heavy and deadly storm. While recording the track, Blue Cheer didn't care about finesse. They were focused on volume, distortion, and energy. They were so loud that people called them the loudest band in the world. The band stripped away all the clean structure of the original song and rebuilt it as a wall of noise. Guitarist Lee Stevens played tunes in ways that were barely under control. Drummer Paul Whaley smashed his drums with so much force that you can hear every beat. Then frontman Dickie Peterson's bass was so heavy that it was almost deafening. Although their version of Summertime Blues was a cover, it was nothing short of iconic. It told the world that rock could be messy, mean, and overpowering. It also helped kick off the idea that heaviness itself could be a kind of art form. Even though they weren't as famous as Zeppelin or Sabbath, Blue Cheer's influence is undeniable. This song laid the groundwork for what heavy music would later become: noisier, have more attitude, and showing more power. Inagata Vida by Iron Butterfly. Iron Butterfly became one of the strangest and most influential rock songs of the 1960s. The title itself was a drunken mispronunciation of In the Garden of Eden, and that weird vibe carries through the entire 17-minute track. When it was released in 1968, it changed the limits of what a rock song could be, mixing dark organ riffs, distorted guitars, and one of the earliest extended drum solos ever recorded. It was slow, hypnotic, and almost trance-like, making you feel like you were dragged into a psychedelic underworld. That feeling it gave would go on to influence hard rock and heavy metal, especially in how it used repetition and weight instead of speed to make an impact. Not to mention the song's structure, which was very revolutionary at the time. Most radio singles were under 3 minutes, but Iron Butterfly didn't care about those rules. They made a song that took its time, shifting between long instrumental breaks and slow verses. Doug Ingles' vocals and Ray Manzarek-style organ lines gave it a unique edge, while guitarist Eric Brand's fuzzed-out tone added some depth. It was less about melody and more about a heavy and surreal mood. Even when the band played a shorter version for radio, the original album Cut is what left the deepest mark, especially for musicians who wanted to break away from clean-cut pop formats. Inagata da Vida became a surprise commercial hit, selling millions and proving there was a large audience for darker, heavier, and more experimental rock. Although Iron Butterfly could never fully get away from the shadow of this one song, their influence continued for decades. They showed bands that you could produce heavy music without being fast, weird without being unlistenable, and long-winded without being boring. Born to be Wild by Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf is often called the first true hard rock anthem, and for very good reason. From the very first riff, it literally feels like a new awakening. The distorted guitar tune, the pounding rhythm, and John Kay's sharp vocals give it an energy that was unmatched at the time. The lyrics such as "Get your motor running, head out on the highway" became the unofficial motto of every biker, rebel, and restless person in the late 60s. Besides being a song about motorcycles and freedom, it introduced the term heavy metal into popular culture, even though the band didn't mean it as a genre. That single phrase, heavy metal thunder, helped give birth to a new movement. What also makes Born to be Wild so iconic is how simple and powerful it is. The riff isn't complicated, but it's unforgettable. The vocals aren't perfect, but they're full of attitude, and the whole thing clocks in at under 4 minutes, making it the perfect blast of rebellion. Steppenwolf might not have invented distortion or loud guitars, but they certainly presented it in a track that felt dangerous and free. The 1968 song quickly gained more popularity after it was featured in the movie Easy Rider. It gave rock music permission to be fast, loud, and unapologetically wild. You can hear traits of it in every band that came after, from AC/DC to Motorhead to Guns N' Roses. Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin. Released in 1969, this track was the one that made it clear that rock music had entered a heavier, darker, and more experimental era. Originally written by Jake Holmes as a folk song, it was transformed into a brooding monster by Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin. The version on their debut album opens with a menacing, descending bass line and Page's eerie guitar bends, played with a violin bow, that make the whole thing sound like it's breathing. When it comes to vocals, Robert Plant outdid himself by sounding like someone who was possessed. As the song progresses, it changes into chaotic solos and thunderous drumming. The structure is unpredictable and epic, showing how far rock could go emotionally and sonically. As it became a popular sensation, it was obvious it wasn't just another blues-influenced track. Zeppelin pushed everything to the edge. The distortion was heavier, the mood was darker, and the energy was a lot stronger. It shifts from slow-burning tension to full-on assault, like a storm, building in real time. Page's guitar work is both technical and fearless, and John Bonham's drumming is so aggressive that it feels like he's trying to break through the studio walls. Plant's voice adds a feeling of desperation and drama, making the whole track pure madness. Dazed and Confused helped define what hard rock and early metal could sound like. Zeppelin introduced dynamics, mood swings, and surreal effects into the formula, and the song became a highlight of their live shows, often lasting over 20 minutes of improvisation and sonic experimentation. It proved that hard rock could be more than just 3-minute blasts. Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. Released in 1970, Black Sabbath is praised for its huge contribution to the birth of heavy metal. From the moment the song begins, with the sound of distant thunder, rain, and church bells, you know it's not like anything else from that era. Then comes Tony Iommi's guitar riff that's slow, heavy, and built on the tritone interval known as the Devil's Interval. This internal was banned in medieval church music because of its dark, unsettling sound. But that single riff changed rock music and created an entirely new genre. When other bands were going easy on riff heaviness, Black Sabbath went all in. Not only was this track rebellious to teenagers, but it also sounded genuinely evil, like something from a nightmare. In the song, Ozzy Osbourne's vocals are shaky, anxious, and full of dread. He sounds like someone watching something horrifying crawl out of the shadows, and no one else can see what he's seeing. The lyrics describe a man who sees a dark figure standing in front of him, paralyzed by fear. Listening to the track feels like a horror movie in music form, and it was unlike anything else in 1970. Bill Ward's drumming is chaotic but somehow rhythmic, like a heartbeat speeding up in panic, while Geezer Butler's bass adds a deep rumble that makes everything feel very claustrophobic. This is the kind of music that makes you feel trapped, anxious, and completely hypnotized. Both the Black Sabbath song and the Black Sabbath album created a new wave of darker, heavier, slower rock. The pair stripped away the usual psychedelic fun of the late 60s and replaced it with doom, paranoia, and depth. While others disliked the track and album, fans understood that the band was just being honest about what life felt like in working-class England, with its dark realities and Catholic superstitions. Almost everything in rock music, from Metallica and Slayer to Soundgarden and Sleep, can trace its roots back to this one track. Which of these trend-setting tracks do you remember? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed watching this video, then hit the like button and share with anyone you know who would love it too. If you'd like more videos like this, then subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you never miss any of our updates.